Hello, fellow scholars and purveyors of morbid curiosities alike. I'm Dr. Caleb, joined by the con artist himself, Dr. Zach. And this is SCPod. Zach, how are you today?
I'm fine. How are you?
I certainly appreciate being in a warmer climate, but there's a lot of people looking at me this time. I can't really, blend in. It's like they know that I'm here for something.
Yeah, no white man goes to Southeast Asia for good reasons.
I guess so. I don't even look like a Men in Black, but I guess they just clue me out. Um, so, yeah. Why am I here in Singapore today?
That's because we are reviving your con career. We sent you to a convention.
Yes, yes. So, dear listener, this week we are covering SCP-4783, the Human Capital Convention. And Zach, do you want to just get us going?
I sure can. Special containment procedures. If an SCP-4783 is discovered, the entire building is to be quarantined from the public, with MTF Chi-65 lion tamers setting up a cordon around its entrances. Its inhabitants are to be relocated to Site-65 for examination, amnestization, and their own protection. Update. Due to the large number of citizens who may be affected by SCP-4783 instances, MTF Chi-65 has been authorized to use force if they encounter resistance from the local government. And I didn't mention this at the start, but this is in fact a Keter. Caleb, we sent you to a Keter convention.
What is this? This is the third Keter in a row.
Yeah, sorry about that. Description. SCP-4783 is a series of residential apartment blocks in the country of Singapore. The exterior of each building appears dilapidated, but is otherwise a standard construction. The oldest built approximately 60 years ago, and the most recent as early as 5. Each building houses approximately 8 to 10,000 individuals. Residents of an SCP-4783 instance spontaneously develop medical conditions associated with stress and old age, namely heart disease, stroke, and mental illness, within a period of 1 to 3 days, in all cases resulting in death. Individuals appear to be affected regardless of race, gender, age, pre-existing conditions, or how long they've been residents of the SCP. It was discovered initially on September 21st, 2017, when Foundation agents embedded in Singapore's healthcare system became aware of about 9,026 individuals admitted to the accident and emergency wards across the island. While a number of reported medical emergencies were not abnormal, all these incident reports listed became SCP-4783-1, and they all came from the same place of origin.
Yeah, that's quite the tongue twister trying to say that, some SCP numbers just roll off the tongue. This is not one of them.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna lie, Dr. Caleb, we had a bit of a situation while you've been out and about. Peanut got out again, so none of us have blinked in about 36 hours.
Okay, well that's TGIF, I guess.
Yeah, something.
Okay, so that is the article. But there are 3 addendums associated with the discovery and the attempted containment of the first instance of 4783. So I will go over addendum 1 here. So this is addendum 4783-1. Deployment of MTF Chi-65 to first site survey. To start off, the forward goes into the background of it. It's a 3-man surveillance team brought in 3 days after the discovery of the SCP, with one Dr. Lai advising via radio. MTF Chi-65 is sent into the apartment of a recently deceased man. They are undercover and do not want to be discovered as the place is crawling with Singapore armed forces. They present a document and are then ushered in. There is a remark about pressing one button among hundreds in the elevator, so one can assume that there's probably hundreds of floors or at least hundreds of destinations. This is a very large living complex. The subject is a 73-year-old woman with no prior health complications who died of congenital heart failure. Dr. Lai remarks that the report was either altered or bogus altogether. The MTF goes inside the building and takes a bunch of evidence, including swabbing a toothbrush and bagging strands of hair. They also set up a hidden camera in a light fixture. One of the Singapore armed officers confronts them and tells them to leave, then radios for backup but is then stabbed in the neck before he can finish. The MTF promptly leaves. And then the afterword, I'm not going to paraphrase, I'm just going to say verbatim, just because there's some big scientific terms, and once again, I am good at the spooky stuff, not with the healthcare stuff. Afterward, DNA samples taken from the team's expedition to SCP-4783-1 confirmed anomalous tampering before and after the incident. We don't have a full picture of how this occurred, but the physiology of the victim's heart was altered within the span of minutes. One moment, her heart was beating normally, the next, she possessed a defect which resulted in cardiac arrest. Following this adventure into 4783-1, all 3 members of MTF Chi-65 were suspended from future field operations due to the death of a government agent. Zach, did I miss anything in that addendum?
No, I think you paraphrased it pretty good. Again, sorry for the listeners. As Caleb is in Singapore, I do not have the ability to drug him and report him again.
You'd have to drug like 2 of me. There's like 4 people in that audio log.
Yeah.
Following the addendum 1, there is noted here addendum 4783-2, the keynote address at the Human Capital Convention 2017. And as Zach is a con man himself, I'm going to let him handle that one.
Thank you, I think. There is a foreword for this addendum as well, stating that this was taking place about a week after the last operation with Chi-65. Foundation agents decided to investigate other large-scale events that were concurrent to the activation of 4783-1's activation. The following excerpts are from a closed-door keynote address from that convention, titled "Leading a Fractured World," delivered by the guest of honor, the Prime Minister of Singapore, Lim Hui Liang? Listeners, I'm white as hell. I can't pronounce that well. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and read these verbatim, just because it is a delivered speech. Excerpt 1. I'd like to welcome all 9,000 delegates to the Human Capital Convention 2017, organized annually by our good friends, the Human Soma Society. I am personally heartened to see many familiar faces from last year's convention, which many of you found to be informative and invigorating. Perhaps it is no surprise that the number of delegates continue to grow year upon year. While nations and corporations have always required human capitals to thrive, it was only a matter of time before the power of the individual was harnessed by individuals such as yourselves in order to meet the demands of a global economy. This is why the Human Capital Convention was founded some 30 years ago. In an age of government crackdowns and groups of interest vying for power, it is our job to keep the flow of quality human capital as fluid as ever. Excerpt 2.
Woo!
What the fuck was that?
That was me clapping and being the crowd for you.
Oh, thank you. I thought your cat was dying. Excerpt 2. For a country as small as Singapore, cultivating human talent is a matter of survival. With little to no natural resources of our own, human hands have built our country. Over the years, we have invested heavily in public housing, amenities, and quality of life improvements in order to grow our citizens into the happy workers they are today. And as you know, happy workers yield the best results. Many of you are already long-term investors and stakeholders of our people. You have been with us from the very founding of Singapore, watching our citizens grow from young babies to the pioneer generation of today. Other countries may boast significant numbers, but our citizens lead long and quality lives, having life expectancy of 83. In fact, I understand that some of you have already seen returns in your investments just a few days ago. This is our commitment. Invest in our citizens today and reap the benefits tomorrow. Excerpt 3. Inside your welcome pack, you will find a brochure from this year's offering, filtered by socioeconomic status, life expectancy, and projected cap on income. Who knows, you may be lucky enough to see your portfolio rise out of the poverty, start a family or two, and even live past the age of 100. I will leave you in the capable hands of my son, Hang Yi, who will walk you through the program for this year's 2-day conference. He will also brief you on the free gowns we will be handing out to all delegates following feedback that last year's closing ceremony got a little messy. Caleb, please laugh. Thank you, Dr. Caleb. Together, we will ensure that Singapore continues to be the hub and crossroads for quality human capital. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy your stay with us. And the afterword for the address says that the Foundation managed to obtain a soft copy of this, quote, brochure before it was taken down by government strike. Framed as an advertisement for real estate development, the document is a catalog of at least 100 residential addresses, including that of the -1 entity from the start of the article. On the cover, it does have the following printed in some pretty striking font. Step 1. Select your resident of choice. Step 2. Your broker seals the deal for life. And Step 3. Cash out anytime and reap the health benefits. And there is another note stating that all further attempts at the location for audio footage have been unsuccessful. So there's nothing suspicious about that.
Yeah. We'll get into it when we get into discussing this, but there's some crazy shit going on here.
Yeah.
So finally, the last addendum for this article, Addendum 4783-3, Line 1's posthumous audio journal entries. I'm going to paraphrase these once again, just because it's a little bit easier, and a lot of it is just the groanings of a dying man. Not to say anything bad about Line 1 or his family, but nobody wants to hear that belly aching.
Really? Aren't we all just the groanings of a dying man?
So, Entry 1 describes how all 3 members feel off after leaving the building. Dr. Lai tries to console, but Line 1 still feels bad for killing the armed officer, or for the killing of the armed officer. Entry 2 goes about Line 1 starting to feel sick, and Dr. Lai says that there's nothing physically wrong with him, and he might just be anxious. And then it also notes that they're staying at Site 65, that is directly under SCP-4783-1, the original building. Entry 3 goes about no progress in finding out how people in the building died even a week later. Lion 1 finds specks of blood in his cough, and he equates it to being something to do with going into the building. Entry 4 goes about Lion 1 being in the hospital, and Dr. Lai says that the government wants to meet with the people that went into the building. Lion 1 is skeptical, and Dr. Lai says it doesn't matter because the Foundation has no idea what is happening to him. They set to meet at a merlion, half fish, statue. I'm going to take a brief pause here and just say that a merlion is very similar to our good friend Yaldabaoth.
My friend and yours.
Our friends indeed. Entry 5 is the audio and video log of Lion 1 and Dr. Lai arriving at the Merlion. and it seems that Lion 1's health hasn't improved. There is a huge crowd with multiple plainclothes MTF soldiers and snipers about. All of a sudden, the crowd dissipates, and all that is left is the 100 or so MTF agents, while 3 men emerge and then are told to stop, or else they will be fired upon. Dr. Lai feigns power, but is seen right through when the men call out who she works for and that they do not have leverage on the Singapore government, and then says that their dynasty has stood the test of time for generations. The men say that they want a life for a life. Since they took a man's life in SCP-4783, they want a life as recompense. A ring of soldiers appear suddenly and far outnumber the group. Dr. Lai relents and lets Lion 1 die, and says she will not meddle in the affair under threat of doing to Site-65 what they did to the building in the first place. And then finally there are some concluding notes from Dr. Lai, and I'm going to read this verbatim as well. I had no choice. They would have killed us all. Autopsy report of Lion 1 shows that the same alteration of his respiratory system, but over a longer period of time. He must have triggered some kind of ritual when he killed that young man in SCP-4783-1. We don't know how far this goes up the chain, or how many thousands of deaths have been covered up by anomalous health conditions over the years. We don't know how many instances of SCP-4783 are out there, but the Foundation will not stand by and watch as an entire nation carves up its citizens for the benefit of a few. There is a difference between sacrifice and murder. I hope Lion 1 understood that. And, yeah, that's the article.
That is the article. Pretty straightforward as far as Sarkic entries go. At least as far as reading and presentation.
Well, yeah, and compare that to the last 2 that we did, Unfinished Ritual and our Land, Our Bondage, that have so many twists and turns, and really we just have the, it's straightforward. We don't know what the hell is happening, but we know that there's some shadow government shit going on.
Yeah.
The deep state's involved.
Well, kinda. I think specifically what we got going on here, Dr. Caleb, is neo-Sarkic shadow government going on.
Yeah, it is kind of interesting. We went from neo-Sarkicism with an Unfinished Ritual. Our Land, Our Bondage is pretty proto-Sarkic, and then we're back to highbrow, high class meat magic.
High class. I wouldn't say highbrow. Yeah, so specifically I think what's going on here is laid out pretty starkly in the address from the Singapore Prime Minister, where they are literally using the lives of people in Singapore as a form of capital or funds, something of value, a commodity, and they're taking this in the form of its people who live around Singapore. What are they doing with that? I have no idea.
You know, it's kind of interesting. It almost strikes me as almost like a Fountain of Youth situation.
Mm-hmm.
Of both neo-Sarkic groups that we've covered have been very much using other people to further their own agenda.
Mm-hmm.
Where proto-Sarkicism is more, not to go back to the way of all flesh, and its allegory for being communism, but is very much for the betterment of a society. And it's also interesting that both neo-Sarkic groups also have a strong tie to Yaldabaoth.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely I feel like there's a thread where the neo-Sarkics missed the part where Yaldabaoth is one of the things that Grand Carsus Ion fought against towards the end of his first mortal life, I guess would be the best way to put that. But what I would kind of feel I need to comment on is that both neo-Sarkic groups we've covered in the Unfinished Ritual and then this, is that they feel like they take from the idea of neoliberalism and laissez-faire capitalism in terms of having this very nonchalant, cavalier sense of the value of human life, and their willingness to sort of exploit that for a small group of venture capitalists in this case, almost in both cases, because the people who were initially involved with an unfinished ritual were local industrial magnates, bankers, and stuff like that. And here it seems like they are roughly targeting the same groups of people, which kind of share that common theme of we're going to exploit people that can't really do anything about it for maybe economic reasons, because unless I missed something, Dr. Caleb, I don't think I ever saw anything that actually mentions what they're doing this for. Or at least there's not like a direct correlation to an output.
So it does. At the end of the addendum that you wrote or that you read, the brochure says step 1, select your residence of choice. Step 2, your broker seals the deal for life. Step 3, cash out anytime and reap the health benefits.
Right.
That's what makes me think that there's something about like maybe a fountain of youth, or they're deriving some non-monetary benefit. There could definitely be monetary benefit from it, but it seems like there's some other benefit to it rather than just strictly financial.
That's kind of where I think the only reasonable explanation for all this is that there has to be a non-monetary value associated with what's going on here. But yeah, it's kind of gruesome. It's pretty ghoulish. This is some General Peter Thiel behavior.
Yeah. To quote one of my favorite quotes from a very famous podcaster, this is some Raccoon City behavior.
Who's that from?
That's you. That's you, Dr. Zach.
Oh shit! I have good lines sometimes. Some general Silent Hill nonsense, but
yeah.
I guess also, I mean, like, what do you think makes this a Keter instead of a Euclid? Because is it just sort of like we can't contain it?
I think it's the bureaucratic nonsense. The whole audio tape in the last addendum where they talk that the three men basically know what the SCP Foundation is. They know what they do. They even know the serial number for 4783.
Mm-hmm.
And the SCP Foundation is basically caught in a rock and a hard place of like they want to contain this thing, but to do so would be going strictly against the will of the Singaporean government. And so I don't think it's necessarily hard to contain or even hard to neutralize if they wanted to go that route.
Right.
But it's just like the amount of fucking paperwork our interns would have to deal with.
That makes sense. I'm kind of surprised that they would be brazen enough to have that statue of Yaldabaoth out there in the open.
Well, they say it's associated with Yaldabaoth, and like this is just an actual like photo of it. It's not like they said that there are people taking pictures of the Merlion and things like that. It could definitely just be played off as this art installation.
Yeah, but if you know, you know.
100%.
Like, I may not know much, but I know a Yaldabaoth. I know a Gnostic deity god when I see it.
But it is noted on Sarkikism that the Foundation really does not understand as much about Sarkikism as we would like to.
Mm-hmm.
And if you start looking for Sarkikism in places that doesn't exist, and then you're just chasing around Meet Jesus for the rest of your life.
Right, like you're looking for penises at the Denver airport.
Exactly. So, it is pretty brazen, but also, like, if I remember right, wasn't there a statue of the Demiurge at an unfinished ritual as well?
Oh, there might have been, but I'm not sure, like...
I know that there were at least depictions, and they were much closer to Yaldabaoth, and maybe that is the like two contrasting theories in Sarkikism. Is like one sides with the more ancient version of it, which is that proto-Sarkikism, closer to Grand Karcist Ion, things like that. And then you have this this new age, more doing it for the betterment of yourself, or like an oligarchy or of some sort that tends to side more with Yaldabaoth. Because both, at the end of the day, at least from what I'm understanding with all this Sarkic nonsense, is both of them are deities of this religion.
That makes sense. And so, like, it sounds like what you're saying is that, like, Proto-Sarkics tend to side more and agree and venerate with Grand Cursus Ion, and Neo-Sarkics seem to have some more affiliation with Yaldabaoth.
Yeah.
I could see that. Like, that's definitely the trend we're observing as we go through these, and so I think you're onto something there.
Yeah, it'll be interesting when we do our finale this season, and we can kind of actually like compare and contrast these, and actually think about these, because there are some trends that aren't necessarily brought forth in some of the background reading material, like on Sarkikism and the forward and everything.
Yes.
So yeah, it's interesting. It's still fairly straightforward. And it's also very apparent. This is a very recent SCP as well.
Yeah, like, because we only had the first emanation of it from about 60 years ago.
Exactly. And we, well, it was discovered in 2017. And so, like, I feel like if we were recording this maybe 2 years in the future, maybe all the bureaucratic nonsense would be happening, and we would have another Citra Acra on our hand.
Yeah, and we can't have that.
We can't have that. I'm not reading any more O5 speeches.
Yeah,
well, at least not today.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, like, where the fuck did that music come from?
What music?
Oh, like, there's music that came that started playing when you started reading the O5 speech.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe the hat guy brought a boombox in.
I
didn't hear anything. It might have been on your end.
He certainly brought guns. He didn't bring a boombox.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, maybe it's the just anomalous properties of 05 dash. Let's move on.
Yeah, whichever one it was. Anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're pretty sure we're the people who are living in the 4783s are being raised as some sort of cattle for probably immortality reasons. But
yeah, I don't even necessarily think it's like for immortality, but maybe like meat magic in general.
Maybe. But I mean, like Sarkic. Well, so like especially Neo-Sarkicism isn't subtle when they let the magic fly, as we saw with Unfinished Ritual. So I mean, if they were using it to fuel something, either it's going to be big and just they're sitting on it, or it's not expressed in a way that's so in your face, which is rare for Neo-Sarkics especially.
Well, so there's a point in the second addendum that talks about that human capital has been the basis for a lot of industry and nations. And so, the island of Singapore is smaller than the state of Rhode Island. And so, but there's a lot of people in this country. And so this could be just like the farm. And the government is obviously in on it. The Prime Minister spoke at a speech about it. This could be a farm that fuels Neo-Sarkicism across the entire world.
Maybe, but I mean, like, Neo-Sarkics usually aren't keen on that level of cooperation. At least as far as we've read. I mean, you
don't think that like the world leaders of industry and politics, like, maybe meet in these back rooms or something? I'm not saying every, maybe Bill Gates isn't doing it, but
that we know of.
That, but these countries or these people that do engage in this neo-Sarkicism don't see the opportunity of like, okay, there is a country farming their own people for the betterment of neo-Sarkicism.
I'm not saying it's impossible. I don't know, I think that neo-Sarkic groups tend to be more self-interested, or at least have more immediate goals. I don't necessarily believe or trust in neo-Sarkic groups to have super tenable long-term goals. But I would be willing to put a pin in that and revisit the idea later on after we've covered one or two more neo-Sarkic groups.
Yeah, for sure. It is interesting, and I do want to do more. This makes me revitalized in like wanting to do more with these neo-Sarkic groups and proto-Sarkic as well, just like the compare and contrast of it all.
Yeah, it's interesting having like a distinct split between the two traditions and practices, because they're
exactly.
It's like they have like the same flavor, but they're going about it in completely different ways. I guess maybe this is a question to ask later on, but I have it in my head now. Is who do you think is more dangerous?
I probably think the neo-Sarkics, just by virtue of like having their hands in more places.
See, like I think that the proto-Sarkics are vaguely more dangerous, and my reasoning is that I don't think that the neo-Sarkics are really fully cognizant of the powers they're playing around with. So it's sort of like a child with a loaded gun in a certain way. They don't really. I don't think they really fully like are cognizant of what it is they got they have their finger on the trigger of. Whereas I feel like the proto-Sarkics have a much better understanding of what they're capable of doing. It's just that they don't want to, or at least they don't have a plan to do it yet. And so I am generally going to be more wary of a group that knows what they're doing and has the patience to wait than...
Yeah, I understand that. I think the reason I gravitate towards neo-Sarkicism being more dangerous is they are far more reaching than proto-Sarkics. Each proto-Sarkic group that we've covered seems to be pretty self-contained.
Yeah.
Either in like little villages or things like that. And they're technophobic, and they don't really commune with the outside world. They're pretty untouched. And while yes, they're probably saving up for this big thing, it's like Red Death or whatever it is, and we'll go into a variant of that, but neo-Sarkicism seems to be a lot more prominent and more globe spanning. Which makes me fear it a little bit more. Is like, yes, they might not understand the powers that they deal with, and they're not going towards this bigger purpose. They're just doing it for self-gain. But, just the two neo-Sarkic groups that we've covered so far, you have one in Massachusetts and one in Singapore. And those are two very separate spots of the world.
Right.
Who knows what other neo-Sarkic groups are out there.
Yeah, my point was that I think neo-Sarkics are definitely more imminently and immediately dangerous as a general thing, but I think like on an existential level, proto-Sarkics are a much bigger threat because they have patience.
100%. Looking at what the neo-Sarkics are doing, like they're just kind of using like humans as fuel for this bigger machine that they're trying to do, and whatever they're doing with that machine, doing what they will. But then you look at some of the proto-Sarkic stuff, and like, I don't know, I haven't seen any meat hentai tentacles at a neo-Sarkic convention.
Right, and like we know that like the types of flesh crafting that the proto-Sarkic groups can get into can really stretch and boggle the mind. And I think a lot of that does come from the fact that like this is their actual religion and cultural practices. And they may have several hundred generations of that institutional knowledge, whereas the neo-Sarkics have more of a sledgehammer approach with power. But I would be interested in revisiting this conversation when we get to the end of the season, just because I feel like we'll have a lot more context. But I just want to ask it now, just because we've read 2 of each now.
Right. So, yeah. Yeah, I can't really think of very much more to say about 4783 here. It's fairly straightforward. We don't really know what is all going on, but we get a basic enough gist to know that that there's some creepy shit going on.
We know what's the problem.
Yep, exactly. So, is there anything else that you want to bring up about this SCP in particular?
No, just a general thing that if anyone ever refers to people as human capital, don't trust them.
Very, very big true. I guess I should ask, is there anything in regards to this SCP that kind of builds upon the lore that we haven't really discussed yet? I feel like it's what we've been discussing this entire time, but...
Yeah, I feel like generally this is a more subtle approach to neo-Sarcasm, and it shows that, Sarcasm as a whole doesn't necessarily have to be, tentacles and giant monsters. It can just be sort of an advancement in just general human cruelty under capitalism.
That's very true.
A commodification of human life, and to a extreme and gross degree.
I said it once earlier this season, and I'll say it again. Bernie Sanders is the hero that we need.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Alright, well, while we contemplate modern politics and meet Jesuses and meet politicians, Zach, where can people find you?
They can find me over on my personal blog of makeawritingcheck.blogspot.com, or they can find me on YouTube under Roll for Writing Presents.
Awesome. You can follow me at Calica1738 on Twitter and Instagram. You can find my YouTube channel at Calica, or my Twitch at Calica Plays. I am taking some time off real quick because I'm going on vacation, or since I've been on vacation. But I will be back very shortly. The other reason you can follow me is to stay in the loop about the podcast, or you can follow the podcast itself. You can follow it on Twitter at SCPod_cast, Instagram at SCPod.cast. We are both available on Spotify and YouTube. And I say this at the end of every episode, but it really does help. And every content creator will tell you that. Interacting in any way, subscribing, following, rating the podcast, liking the video, commenting, anything like that. If you like it, if you dislike it, show a little bit of it, just prove that you're not part of the Human Capital Convention, and show that you have seen it, even if you dislike it, and it can go a long way. Yeah, that's what we got for you. And Zach, what are we covering next week?
Next week we are covering SCP-6283, Blood Brother.
Oh, that's interesting. We had 4783 and 6283 next week. I wonder if there's something there. Anyway, sounds like a good time. And, we did bring you on for a panel on Warhammer lore, and it's time to really get you out of here. So do you have any last nuggets that you want to tell to the crowd?
Sports ball, do the thing, get the point.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time.
Bye.